Coming up on the weekend edition of A Daily Walk.
You are going to be opposed. You take this message, this power, you step into this arena, just know this, you're going to be opposed. There are wolves that encircle you. It's a good thing you have a good shepherd, because the good shepherd fights off the wolves. Jesus is the great shepherd of the sheep. He fights off those wolves. So I'm able as a sheep to step into that, knowing that my shepherd has sent me, he's called me, he's leading me, he's with me. The Lord is my shepherd.
Facing some opposition or obstacles in your daily walk, that's to be expected. But how do we respond to it as God would have us? We're about to find out today on A Daily Walk through a study of Matthew chapter 10. Here, Jesus is preparing his disciples for what's ahead, and we stand to benefit from this valuable instruction. First up, we're encouraged to be content wherever God has us. Here's Pastor John Randall with a great illustration to drive that home.
In my life and ministry, I have stayed in some gnarly places over the years. And specifically in going on to the mission field, places that I could not take my wife to. It wouldn't be good, ladies. But I stayed there because that's where God had me. And I remember in one particular place, there was running water. I should say there was no hot water. And I remember if you wanted to take a shower and it was warm weather, you had to get a bucket full of cold water and you'd fill it up and you dump it over yourself. It was quite invigorating. And then after that, you would have to soap if you wanted to be clean, and then you would have to dump it back over you and then do it again to make sure you got it. And I thought the first day it was like, do we have hot water anywhere? You just start getting all bothered. And by the end of the week, I'm like, this is refreshing. Hey, it was just like, I just accepted it. I just adapted and thought, this is, I'm not doing this at home, but I appreciate that there was actually water. You just be content where you are. And then when God, Paul said, I have learned in whatever state I am in, therewith to be content. I know how to be abased. I know how to abound. I know how to have much. I know how to have little. I've just learned in the school of contentment. Listen, when it comes to calling and serving and being placed, you be content where God has you until God says, this is what I want you to do besides that. Just learn that. Learn that lesson early and receive it and accept it where he has you. Contentment. It's an ongoing lesson. Now he reminds the disciples too that, listen, there's a possibility that there will be reception and rejection. Look at what it says in verse 13. Now, if the household is worthy, let your peace come upon it. If it's not worthy, let your peace return to you. Verse 14. And whoever will not receive you, nor hear your words, when you depart from that house or city, shake off the dust from your feet. Assuredly, I say to you, it will be more tolerable for the land of Sodom and Gomorrah in the day of judgment than for that city. Again, in the minds of the disciples, you can't help but assume that this was a question. What if people don't like the message we preach? We've noticed there's some people that don't really like your message. What if we go and we do what you said and they don't receive us? How do I respond to rejection? Jesus tells them, if they won't receive you, then shake it off. This shaking off of the dust of the city was kind of an outward demonstration of, okay, I'm moving on. Obviously, they weren't open to receive it. I'm not going to stop serving the Lord. I'm going to shake off the dust and I'm going to move on to the next place. I'm going to go where the door might be open. You have to learn to do that. Shake it off. Some of you that's a word for you today. You need to shake some things off. Well, this happened back in the day, and that's why I don't do it anymore. And, the church really hurt me. And I'm not saying that's invalid or that, listen, the church is made up of imperfect people. But I'm saying some people, they live in the dust and they need to shake it off and be used by the Lord. You need to keep going, keep moving forward. Don't live off of that. Shake that off and keep going. You can't stop. You have to keep moving forward. Too many people get stuck in the dust. It's time to keep serving the Lord, keep moving on. If they don't receive you, hey, listen, that's not your fault. You delivered the goods, you delivered the message, they didn't receive it. All right, move on to somebody who will receive it. Don't get discouraged. It's easy to do. And I've found many times in my life, I just have to shake it off. This person you invested in or that thing you were doing, and it just didn't seem to go well, like you had hoped. And it's easy to think, well, why did I just invest all of that? I don't know. God was using it in your life, so you shake it off and you keep going. I think of the Apostle Paul in Acts chapter 28. You remember in Acts chapter 28 when Paul was there picking up all of those sticks after the ship had shipwrecked there on the island of Malta, picked up all those sticks and he went to make a fire and he put the fire there and the sticks there, and a viper jumped out, attached itself to Paul. And it says immediately he shook it off. And all of the natives thought, oh, he's going to die. He must have been very bad. Normally when a viper attaches, it's a matter of time before you swell up and die. So everybody's just watching Paul, waiting for him to swell up and die. You know, everyone's looking at you and you know, you're like, why are you looking at me? And you're just like, I'm not looking at you. You know, and they're looking at him and he doesn't die. And they thought, wow, what happened? He shook it off. And in a sense, that's exactly what we have to do. The devil loves to just come out, attach, shake it off, keep serving the Lord. Well, in addition, Jesus warns his disciples. I'm glad he tells them up front. There's going to be some obstacles. There's going to be some opposition. What do? Verse 16. Behold, how about this picture? I send you out, all right, as sheep, okay, in the midst of wolves. All right. Sheep in the midst of wolves. Do you know how dangerous that is? Sheep in the midst of wolves? Why is that so dangerous? Because wolves, well, they eat sheep. You're going into you are going to be opposed. You take this message, this power, you step into this arena, just know this, you're going to be opposed. There are wolves that encircle you. It's a good thing you have a good shepherd, because the good shepherd fights off the wolves. Jesus is the great shepherd of the sheep. He fights off those wolves. So I'm able as a sheep to step into that, knowing that my shepherd has sent me, he's called me, he's leading me, he's with me. The Lord is my shepherd. But this is what it looks like. So how do I respond in that? Well, he tells them. Therefore, this is the environment you're going to be in. Therefore, be wise as serpents and gentle as doves. That's how you're to be. This is such a good balance. Serpents were seen as being very cunning, very discerning, very wise, able to get around. Whereas a dove is a picture of peace and gentleness and compassion and kindness. You need both. You need both. He didn't say just be wise as a serpent, all right? Anybody comes out, bite him. He didn't say, be as gentle as a dove. If anybody approaches you, fly away. He said you need both. You need both discernment and compassion in the midst of an environment of opposition so that you know how to navigate through that. Oh man, this will serve you so well. And then he says also, by the way, beware of men, for they will, not might, they will deliver you up to councils, scourge you in the synagogues, that's painful, and you will be brought before governors and kings for my sake, and as a testimony to them and to the Gentiles. But when they deliver you up, look at this, make note of this, do not worry about what you should speak, for it will be given to you in that hour what you should speak. Why is that? Because it's not you who speak, but the Spirit of your Father who speaks in you. Oh, how comforting. I mean, first of all, how frightening. Hey, sheep in the midst of wolves. Okay, then what? Also, you're going to be scourged. Scourged? And also, they're going to deliver you up to kings and governors and Gentiles. Okay? And you're going to need to say something. What do we say then? First of all, don't worry about it. The Spirit of God will put the word of God into your heart, and it'll come out of God's going to give you what you need to say in that moment when you need to say it. Again, I find this to be so comforting. First of all, the fact that there is opposition, can I just say this to you? The fact that there is opposition is a good sign. It's a good sign. You say, how can you say that? Because it means you're on to something. It means you're over the target. It means you're getting close. Why the opposition? Why the pushback? Why the obstacles? Because you're actually doing something that's worth opposing. You're actually making a difference. So don't be surprised. How come I'm just trying to do good things. How come people are opposed to me? I'm just trying to love people. Yeah, good for you. That's because the devil hates that. So you're going to be opposed, man. This is what happens. So when that is the case, you dig deep into the Word of God and you hide it in your heart so that when you are faced with confrontation and you have to give a response, you actually have something for the Spirit of God to recall. Listen, there are many times when I sit down, I open my Bible before the Lord devotionally, and I'm reading and I'm taking in and I'm absorbing and I'm writing down, and I'm not really sure what it's for. for that particular day, and then a week goes by or 2 weeks goes by, and suddenly I'm confronted with a situation, and there is recall of what I had read and written down 2 weeks earlier for that moment. I have something to pull from because of something I have deposited. Folks, this is why it's so important to read the Word of God, to be ready in season, out of season, so that when you are brought to that position, you've got something to say because the Spirit of God has something to recall. So important. And I'm so thankful. You've been in that situation, right? Where if you've been a Christian, you've been confronted with something and something comes up and things are coming out of your mouth and you're saying things and you realize after the fact, where did that even come from? Because that wasn't pre-planned. That wasn't scripted. Hold on a second. All right. Jesus said, you did not plan it out. It just flowed out. How did that happen? Guys, that's the work of the Holy Spirit. Working through you, speaking through you. Because you were available. I really, personally, if I may say, as a pastor, this is something I count on and look to all the time. Lord, let your Spirit. I've written things down, okay? I write things down. Okay, that's all you get to see. I write these things down. But at the same time, I'm fine to just scrap it all if there's something that needs to be said that is not written. Prepare privately, prepare in secret, but hopefully in the moment. There's other things that the Lord is speaking today to you specifically, things that he's bringing to my remembrance in the moment so that you can be ministered. That's how God works through the Spirit in our lives. But then Jesus, he said, persecution is inevitable. It's going to happen in some form. In some form, it's going to happen. It comes through different means. And maybe you're on the receiving end of some persecution or some shade or some hate. Maybe that's because you're identifying with Jesus, but the Spirit of God is going to speak through you if you're available. But then Jesus goes on to say in verse 21, preparing them for what's going to happen. It might even affect their family. It says in verse 21, now brother will deliver up brother to death. Father, his child. Children will rise up against parents and cause them to be put to death. And you will be hated by all, notice this, for my name's sake. But he who endures to the end will be saved. And when they persecute you in this city, flee to another. I say to you, you will not have gone through the cities of Israel before the Son of Man comes. Verse 21 gives us insight. Talks about family relations. Talks about family members, brother against brother, father against, etc. A family dynamic as a result of this ministry. And again, you don't have to raise your hand, but I know plenty of people in this room who, because of your stance for Jesus, because of your love for Jesus, because of you believing the truth, it has affected your family in a divisive way. Because of the convictions you have, because of the stand that you've taken, because of where you choose to build your life, there are certain members of your family that say, you know what, have fun at church. We're not talking to you anymore. Or don't come over on what day. And please, if you're going to, don't even say please, just forget. There's just this division that's happened. Why? Because you sided with Christ. I've chosen to follow Jesus. I've known people in my day who, because of their following Jesus, they've been disowned from their family. Perhaps they were in a particular false religion. And when they found out that Jesus was the Messiah and that Jesus was Lord, and they turned their life over to Jesus and surrendered to Jesus, they were disowned by their family. Cut out of the inheritance. Had a funeral for them. It's like you never existed. You're dead to me. Wow. You talk about a cost to following Jesus. Jesus said, this could happen, where you find family turning against family. Jesus said this could take place. And persecution in one city and hated by all. Why? He said you're hated. Why? For my name. Listen, when hate comes at you from the world because you stand for Jesus, know this. It's not ultimately they hate you, they hate the one you stand for. They hate Jesus. That's what gives me compassion for people. If you're ever on the receiving end of persecution or words that are hurtful and spiteful because you stand for the gospel, this is what I realize. Ultimately, their fight is with Jesus. It's not with me. It's the one that I proclaim. It's the one who lives in me, not me. They're angry at him. And for that, I feel sad. I feel compassion for them because they're lost. They're going to hell. I mean, that's how they live. So my heart has compassion rather than get upset and want to respond. I want to pray and think, wow, how sad. They just don't know the Lord. It would be so different if they did. Jesus said they're going to hate you for my name's sake. Nobody sets out to be hated. What's your goal in life? I just hope to be hated by as many people as possible. By the time this thing, nobody likes to be hated. And yet Jesus said, you will be if you stand for me. And then verse 24, a disciple is not above his teacher, nor a servant above his master. It's enough for a disciple that he be like his teacher and a servant like his master. And if they called the master of the house Beelzebub, how much more are they going to call those of his household? Therefore, look at this, do not fear them. For there's nothing covered that will not be revealed and hidden that will not be known. Do not fear them. Jesus said that the disciples weren't above their teacher. And verse 25, a disciple that he be like his teacher. I hope, and I'm going to assume that is your desire. As a disciple of Jesus, you want to be like Jesus. You want to be like him. And if that is your desire, and if that is your pursuit, and if that is your goal, and if that is your passion, Jesus said, just know this. They hated me, they're going to hate you. They call me names, they're going to call you names. This is just part of it. And then he says to them, don't fear. You say don't fear to people who are afraid. I'm assuming that as Jesus is saying these things to his disciples, their eyes are just getting wider and wider. Like, you know, this whole calling into to tell people about you. I mean, maybe this is serious. And so Jesus speaks to them, don't worry and don't fear. The two things that I think oftentimes cripple us in our calling, worry and fear. Oh, they work together, don't they, in tangent to just stop us from going forward, from hindering us, from fulfilling the calling that God has in our life. I'm worried. What if it doesn't work out? Don't worry. Well, I'm worried that there's not going to be enough to, don't worry about that. Well, I'm afraid that they might, don't fear. These two things that we constantly have to battle against if we are going to operate in the calling that we've been given. Don't fear, don't worry. You're empowered, you're called, so walk in it. Jesus said, what has been hidden, it's going to be revealed. There's only so much persecution, by the way, that you'll have to endure. It's limited. Jesus said, don't fear what they can do to the body. I mean, it only goes so far. And then he reminds them that they are valued by God. Notice once more, verse 27, he said, whatever I tell you in the dark, you speak in the light. What you hear in the ear, preach on the housetops. Verse 28, again, do not fear those who can kill the body, but they can't kill the soul. Rather, fear him who's able to destroy both soul and body in hell. Are not two sparrows sold for a copper coin? Not one of them falls to the ground apart from the Father's will, but the very hairs of your head are all numbered. Here it is again. Do not fear. Therefore, you are of more value than the sparrows. Do you notice that? 3 times in just a few verses, Jesus said repeatedly, do not fear. You think they were afraid? I do. So he had to say it again. And then he had to say it one more time. Don't fear man. The fear of man brings a snare. Fear God. Don't be afraid because you're more valuable than even the sparrows. God's going to take care of you. This is what the disciples had to be reassured of consistently. And then finally, Jesus said, therefore, or in light of everything that I've told you, this calling, where I'm sending you, what I'm equipping you to do, therefore, whoever confesses me before men, I will confess before my Father who is in heaven. But whoever denies me before men, I will also deny him before my Father who is in heaven. That's powerful. The promise of reward. The person who is willing to confess Jesus before this world. Jesus said, I will confess you before my Father. The person who is ashamed of Jesus Unwilling to confess. Jesus said, I won't confess you before my Father. What a blessing to be able to confess Jesus before this world. The promise of he will confess us before the Father. There's so much here in these verses, but it starts with a revelation of a need. This is the need. What do you do when you see the need? You start with prayer. You pray about it. Lord, what would you have me to do? And once you pray about it, you may find that the Lord then calls you and empowers you to meet that need. And then he sends you out. Well, how's it going to provide? God's going to provide. Trust him. Well, what if they don't receive me? Shake it off. Well, what should I say? This is what you should say. Well, where should I go? You should be content. You should bloom where you're planted. Well, what about this is what you do? Well, what if they persecute me? Oh, yeah, they will. Be wise as a serpent, gentle as a dove. Well, what if? Don't fear. Well, what if? Again, please, don't fear. Yeah, but what about? Don't fear. Okay, well, there you have it. Confess me before men. I'll confess you before my Father in heaven. You know, guys, it's going to be so worth it. One second, less than that in heaven will make anything that we endured here worth it as we're confessed before the Father in heaven. Let me remind you, in the book of Isaiah, in chapter 6, the prophet Isaiah was given a rare opportunity of a vision of the throne room of God. And in that vision, it says that he saw the Lord high and lifted up, the angels around him, declaring his holiness. And in this vision that the prophet Isaiah received, he said, woe is me, I'm undone. I'm a man of unclean lips, and I dwell among a people that are unclean. And then it says that the Lord took a coal from the altar, and he touched Isaiah's lips, purified his speech. But not only did he purify his speech, but there seems to be an implication that his ears were open to hear the conversation. And he heard the Lord say, who will go for us? Who will we send? And Isaiah responded, he said, here am I. Send me. Send me. I'm available to do with my life what you will. And it was then that Isaiah was then sent out by the Lord. Why? Just because he was purified, he could hear, and he responded and said, I'm here. I wasn't claiming to be some incredible prophet, just a guy, just saying, I'm here, send me. Folks, may that be our heart this week, that we would say, Lord, I'm here. You calling me? I'm trusting you to empower me. Send me out, that I might be used for your glory and confess you before men, that I might be confessed before my Father who is in heaven.
That is Pastor John Randall, and this is the weekend edition of A Daily Walk. We're studying the Gospel of Matthew right now. If you missed a portion or would just like to hear it again, visit adailywalk.org or request a CD copy for a cost of just $5 by calling toll-free at 877-242-0828. That's 877-242-0828. Did you know you can also listen to Pastor John on your mobile device? Check out the Calvary South OC Church app and look for A Daily Walk wherever you get your podcasts. We're really excited about this month's offer, a Bible study book written by Pastor John's wife, Michelle Randall. It's titled Perfected, A Journey Through Proverbs 31. To many women, Proverbs 31 seems to set a standard that's impossible to achieve. They're left feeling defeated and discouraged, like they don't measure up. But this doesn't reflect the heart of God the Father for his precious daughters. When viewed through the sanctifying work of Jesus, Perfected, A Journey Through Proverbs 31 breathes fresh, truth-filled perspective. This isn't just for wives and moms, but for women of all ages. Get a copy today for the special price of $10 at adailywalk.org or call 877-242-0828. When you support A Daily Walk, you're helping people all over the world hear about the love of Jesus, and many are growing as a result. So thank you for helping us cover the cost of being on the radio. Again, make a donation online safely and securely at adailywalk.org or call us at 877-242-0828. In these difficult days, it is so important that we be praying for one another. So please send in your prayer requests today. Our email address is adailywalk@gmail.com. That's adailywalk@gmail.com. We'll resume our series in Matthew's Gospel next weekend on A Daily Walk with John Randall, where you never have to walk alone. This program is made possible through your generosity and brought to you by Calvary South OC.